Leaving the east gate of Yellowstone near sundown, somewhere between there and Cody, maybe halfway, and after dark, I saw a dark, bipedal motion moving out of the tunnel of light provided by my van. It was very brief, and when I got back to Florida at some point, I received a Field and Stream and read about the Skookum cast. After reading it, I went to the BFRO and found the Wyoming hotspot, and it all came back. I'm a cautious observer and realized how your eyes can sometimes play tricks. I asked my wife, prior to telling her about the Skookum cast article or the other information, about whether she remembered me saying anything on the way when she left Yellowstone. She said that all she could remember was me joking about seeing Bigfoot. I wanted to be sure it wasn't a manufactured memory, because some time had passed. It was a long day, and we had seen lots of wildlife, and finished with a nursing grizzly with 2 cubs, just before leaving the park. What I saw reminded me of a moose in color. I've always described moose as being difficult to see at night, by saying it's the black that moves at the outer limits of your lights. Often, you really don't get a clear outline of the animal, but know by the way it moves. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's 2:30 in the morning now, so forgive me, I'm a bit groggy. I was planning a trip back this summer to take a better look around. I was finishing at Masters last summer at Colorado State and had a week between classes, so we headed to Yellowstone in hopes of seeing a grizzly and the park. Had I been in Washington, I probably would have been looking for the Gigantopithecus. Many years ago, I talked to Dr. Krantz and Peter Byrne while working on a project for an animal behavior class at the University of Florida. When I called them, they seemed credible and were very helpful. My memory is from a second or two. 2 strides that it took from the middle of the eastbound lane to the middle of the westbound lane to the gravel on the side of the road, dark and large. Half laughing, I told my wife that I saw a Sasquatch. She said so did she. We both laughed and said we must be tired. She said turn around, which made me laugh even more. We're just tired. She pointed out that we didn't even know we'd ever get back. I don't think any more about it until I went to the BFRO, but I'll be going back this summer, probably June, depending on the cost of gas. It's getting crazy again. I am an outdoor enthusiast who was visiting the Cody, Wyoming area this summer during the second week of July, right around the 14th. While traveling the highway to Yellowstone National Park, about 40 miles west of Cody, I encountered heavy tourist traffic late in the day. I decided, rather than fight it, to pull off the highway for a while and go for a walk. I hiked up an unmarked path north of the highway through intermittent timber. I was traveling at a leisurely pace, exploring rocky outcrops and looking for Native American artifacts. Well, about a half mile from the road, I could still hear traffic. I heard some rocks rolling downhill ahead and above me. It was maybe 100 yards away. Mule deer and other game animals are plentiful in the area, and I didn't think much of it. I had bear spray with me, as this was a well-known grizzly country. Maybe another half an hour went past, and I was taking a break, sitting on a rock ledge with a good view of the valley to the south. I heard underbrush breaking not far away on a steep, timber-covered slope that led down to a dry stream bed. I was able to distinguish the pattern of an animal walking through the trees. Again, I didn't think much of it. I'm used to hearing game in the woods and don't spook at stuff like that. I guessed that it was probably deer feeding along the slope. A little odd considering the time of day. Its behavior was highly inconsistent with bears, which don't hang around when people show up. I began hiking again, and almost immediately heard something move through the brush just below me in the same spot. This was a little strange, I thought, like it was staying with me or something. I tried to see down the hill, but when I stopped, I couldn't hear it. It seemed to stop moving when I did, and I couldn't get a fix on its location. I began to get a somewhat uneasy feeling about things at this point. There is no good way to describe it, other than something seemed to be intentionally staying with me. I started walking again, shortly after, not having heard anything for a little while. I heard something run across the rocks, not far up in front of me. It was up and out of the drainage at this point. I was getting a little apprehensive by this time, and decided to start back towards the road, which was maybe a mile away. I walked pretty quickly, and for most of the way, I heard nothing. But about a quarter mile or so from the highway, and maybe 15 minutes since I turned back, I heard rocks and debris falling down slope again. It seemed awfully close, and I instinctively whirled around, thinking that I might see something, which I did. So I will do my best to describe it to you. But, as I only got a short glimpse, I can't be too sure of what it was. It was about 60 or 70 yards away, on a rocky slope, immediately adjacent to the same heavily timbered slope I had been hiking along. As soon as I turned and looked at it, it jumped right into the cover and completely out of sight. There is one thing I am absolutely certain of. Whatever it was upright. I could clearly see two limbs of the ground that appeared more like arms than legs. They were definitely hanging down the side, and not down the front, as one might expect of a four-legged animal standing on two legs. This doesn't mean that it wasn't a bear, but I've never heard of a bear acting like this thing was. That is, if I'm right, and it was the same animal that I feel was following me all along. You hear about predatory bear behavior, where they follow people though, so who knows? At any rate, the animal was brown, with very long hair. I noticed that when it leapt into the woods. The hair on it kind of swayed to one side from the sudden motion. It seemed longer than bear hair though, and to notice this swaying effect at this distance, I would guess that maybe the hair was a foot long or more. Also, for just that initial instant before its flight, I got a pretty good look at its face, which was long and somewhat flat. It was too far away to clearly make out individual features though, but I have seen several bears at greater distances, and it didn't strike me that that's what it was. I was not aware of the BFRO at the time, nor of the occurrences detailed in it for this area. When I mentioned this incident to a friend, who had not heard of the BFRO either, we did a search on Bigfoot out of curiosity. I was a little astonished to see the main page indicating this region as potential Bigfoot country, with many sightings. I figured I might as well say something. I think all three of the other incidents had witnesses, and I didn't. So I can't point to another who can verify anything that I saw or heard. It would have been nice just to see if somebody else had seen something resembling what I think I saw. Trust me when I say, it takes a little bit of time for it to fully register in your brain. You just don't think right off, hey, there's a Bigfoot. I was probably almost at my vehicle before I even let that thought even enter my mind. I can't say for sure what I saw, but I had been hearing it through the woods throughout the entire hike. One tends to make these connections afterwards, but I really have no way of fully knowing. I will say, however, I think that it might have been, but this is based more on a feeling than anything else. I realize that breaking branches and rock slides don't exactly constitute scientific certainty. It really was like something was checking me out though, that's for sure. And again, the incident had occurred in the late afternoon. The weather was clear at the time, with great visibility, so there was no real mistaken identity. There might have been intermittent thunderstorms in the region, but there was no rain at the time. It was the winter of 1980. My older brother and I were hiking and camping in Yellowstone Park. After a 5-mile hike from the road up to a lake that reportedly was the only place in North America to catch Arctic grayling. Other than in the Arctic, we set up camp for the night. After eating the day's catch and cleaning up, we settled in for bed early, as we were tired from the day's hiking and fishing. We were in our tent, quietly talking and starting to get drowsy, when all of a sudden, something ran by us on two legs, something very large and heavy. We looked at each other, with eyes bulging out of our heads, and I told him just to go see what it was. He replied, "No flippin' way." And as we had no sidearms or weapons, we just sat there terrified for the rest of the night. At daybreak, we broke camp and left there looking for tracks, but the ground was bare, and there was no sign of our midnight visitor, except for our own personal experiences.